Welcome into the Charter Podcast, brought to you by St. Xavier University. I am Ruthie Polinsky with my co-hosts, Alex Shapiro and Clay Harbor, and we are bringing this episode to you, taping this episode on a Monday, and we will do sort of a state of the coaching search recap after a very eventful weekend, and then we'll get into our latest profile, because we found out just a few hours ago that Mike McCarthy will not be returning to Dallas, which means he is a free agent and open to interview everywhere else. So we'll have our professor, Alex Shapiro, give us sort of a rundown of Mike McCarthy. What could he potentially bring to the Chicago Bears? And we'll have a little bit of a discussion on that. But let's start, guys, with just sort of the state of the coaching search. Chicago Bears, Mike Vrabel is off the market. He, in a matter of days, had his interview with the New England Patriots and went into negotiations over the weekend and had his introductory press conference today. So Mike Vrabel is a New England Patriot once again. And if you guys caught any of that press conference today, some of the headlines, I mean, it's hard not to be fired up if you're a New England Patriots fan and sort of what he brings and his mentality. I think it's disappointing to know that there wasn't sort of a more aggressive push to make him at least hold out for an in-person interview with the Chicago Bears. Maybe they felt like it was a done deal, you know, even in the meeting they had with him last week. But I don't know about you guys. I'm a little disappointed to know that there wasn't sort of a bigger push to get Mike Vrabel in the building, have him in person in Chicago and in Lake Forest, and try and swoon him a little bit. You can make a case for sort of the situation in Chicago to be better. Obviously, he has a history and a lot of love for New England and what he was able to do in Foxborough. 3 Super Bowls, sure, sounds nice. But, you know, I guess I'm just trying to play sort of an objective third party of, hey, don't you think the Bears could have maybe tried a little harder?
I'll say, you know, I'll start by saying it always felt like Mike Vrabel was going to be the head coach of the Patriots. We talked about that. Like during the time, like that just seemed like it was a slam dunk. And obviously it happened quickly and it happened as many people expected. So let's just get that out of the way. However, I do agree with you. You know, the Bears had an opportunity to get Mike Vrabel in person. They chose to do all virtual, at least what we know, the information that's available to us right now. They chose to go all virtual, it seems, with these kind of first rounders. Now, guys like Aaron Glenn, guys like Ben Johnson, they could not come in person, but they could have split it up. They could have brought somebody like Mike Vrabel in person to really make that big pitch up front because, again, everybody kind of had a sense that he was going to New England. So if he was high on your list, you would think that, yes, make your big push early on to see if you can prolong that conversation, to see if you can get him onto your short list before he goes to New England. All of that said, none of this is surprising. It just makes too much sense for Vrabel to go back to New England. His demeanor fits that program. If you know, it's just a slam dunk. So we talked about Vrabel early because we figured this might happen soon, and sure enough, it did happen.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Alex, and I think that anybody looking at the situation and knowing Mike Vrabel, a guy that had 3 Super Bowls with the New England Patriots, knew that they were the favorite, the relationship he had with the Crafts, he knows the city. He's lived out there for several years. He's comfortable there. Mike Vrabel was the favorite. But when you have a chance to get him into your building, look him in the eye, try to sell yourself to him as much as he's selling yourself to you. If he's your guy, you got to take that chance. You got to take that opportunity. And then what makes it look even worse is when you get the reports that Vrabel signs with the Patriots, he's going to agree to terms with the Patriots, even though there was a late push by the Bears. Don't make a late push. You had an opportunity to get him in the building when it mattered. So now you're making a late push. That makes you look even worse. You didn't see that coming like all the fans did. Okay, the Patriots knock out their 2 Rooney Rule interviews. They got Mike Vrabel coming in person. You're telling me you couldn't see that coming. So get him in the building, Take that opportunity. I don't care. You want to be fair and equitable to all the candidates. Maybe it looks bad if you bring in Vrabel. I don't care. This is the corporate world, multi-billion-dollar industry. You get this guy in your building. I don't care if there was a 1% chance. If you thought this was the guy, you take that chance and you swing. Another thing that it says to me is, I want your guys' take on this, Ruthie and Alex, when it says the Bears tried to make a late push for Vrabel. Obviously, we don't know what that means. That's just, I think that was Diana Rossini who reported that. I don't know exactly what a late push is, but when you're Ben Johnson or one of these other coaches that see that and they see the Bears, maybe they were trying to get Vrabel in the building. That's the guy they wanted. Does that change your opinion about the job, knowing that maybe you're the second choice?
That's an interesting take. From all of the reporting around Ben Johnson's sort of campaign, his camp, sounds like Ben Johnson understands that he is probably a top candidate too. I think when you're comparing yourself to a former head coach, someone who's had success, like those are two very different sort of candidates. To me, just sort of what this is telling me is the Bears still don't know what they want, what they need. And do you want Mike Vrabel or do you want Ben Johnson? Because to me, those are two very different candidates, right? So if you're looking for someone that sort of fits that personality of Mike Vrabel, you know, a disciplinarian, someone who's going to hold people accountable, challenge other people's opinions, that there's a bucket of candidates that fit that, right? And then I think with Ben Johnson, I'm not saying he's not a disciplinarian, but everything we've heard is that he's just sort of fits that sort of offensive-minded guru, whiz kid, young, inexperienced, never been a head coach. So I don't know. I hear you, Clay. I think that's an interesting thought. I don't think Ben Johnson is not going to he's going to be like, oh, bye Bears. Like, I don't care about you anymore because you also wanted Mike Vrabel. Just because I think if he wants the Bears job, he's going to take the Bears job. If he doesn't want the Bears job, he's going to go somewhere else, which Alex, let's get your thoughts. But I also want to kind of transition into some of the reporting about Ben Johnson in Las Vegas. I want to talk about that for a moment after we hear from you, Alex, on that.
So, yeah, I agree with you, Ruthie. I don't know that it changes the calculus for Ben Johnson just because it's like, this is how head coaching hirings work. You know, every team has a short list and all of those short lists have multiple coaches. To me, when I hear that, I wonder, and this is pure speculation on my part, but I wonder if, you know, the Bears had questions about Mike Vrabel, as they should. You know, there's the offense piece. Who's going to be your offensive coordinator? What's your plan for that? Why did things work with Arthur Smith and not really anybody else? What is your quarterback development plan? Because that's been another pain point area, and that is all important with the Bears. So if they had those questions and they were saying, okay, Ben Johnson has his own questions, Vrabel has his own questions, let's give each of these guys a fair shake in their first interviews. And then they were really, really impressed by Vrabel. That's where I think maybe that late push comes in, saying like, okay, this first interview went really, really well. You impressed us with your answers to these questions. Now let's make that hard charge. So that's, to me, how I kind of interpreted that. But that's just my interpretation. That's just my speculation. And, you know, when it comes to brass tacks, I don't think it makes the job less desirable for other candidates.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to get to the Ben Johnson Raiders reporting over the weekend that Tom Brady is sort of personally campaigning to get Ben Johnson to the Raiders. And, this, because we talk about the Rooney Rule and how it was just completed in what the New England Patriots did. I don't think there's any agreement about whether or not they did justice by the Rooney Rule, like in New England. There's a case to be made for both sides of whether or not, that's okay right now. But regardless, sort of a similar situation, it seems like, is happening in Vegas right now, just with the way that they have very clearly decided that Ben Johnson is who they want. Tom Brady, a big part of that, what do we call it? Ownership now seems to be has a big say. Hello, words. Am I going to be able to speak today? Sorry, it's Monday. Ben Johnson, Tom Brady clearly is using his voice with his now part ownership of the Vegas Raiders to really try and recruit Ben Johnson. Recruit was the word I was going for. Okay, Ruthie, love it. So I ask you guys this. The Raiders' job is an interesting one, right? Like, they've seen a lot of dysfunction there, and there's really no clear path for a quarterback in the immediate future. The roster has question marks. But Tom Brady having a big say in sort of what the vision is for that organization, to me, makes that job very appealing. Because guess what? Whether or not you like him on Fox, Tom Brady knows football. Tom Brady knows what winning a Super Bowl looks like, or 7. Okay. So to me, it's Tom Brady's voice carries so much weight in whatever is happening in Vegas, and that maybe the times are different there now.
Yeah.
Versus maybe Ben Johnson talking to Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren on a screen. How do those two scenarios sort of compare in your mind? Clay, why don't you start this one off?
I think that's definitely something to keep in mind. I mean, Tom Brady, the greatest player to ever live. I was able to obviously play with him, brief stint on the Patriots, but being around him, just knowing how intelligent he is, how hard of a worker he is, whatever he's doing, you are getting the utmost from Tom. He is just very capable football mind when it comes to everything, being in a huddle with that guy, watching him run the offensive meetings with Josh McDaniels. Both of them are running the meeting. I mean, this guy just knows so much about football. That's definitely something that comes into account. So I think that's big. And it's interesting because it came out that he's calling the Lions game next week as well. So I'm like, isn't this a conflict of interest here? This guy is obviously on Fox. The main broadcast is calling the Lions game of the offensive coordinator he is trying to entice to come be the head coach of the team that he is the minority owner of. And there's all these rules in place. If I'm sure you guys have got a chance to look at some of these rules, what these commentators can't do if they're a part owner or a player. And it's just insane. But the Raiders' job is going to be enticing for Ben Johnson. And we talked about it. Here's why. He's going to have a chance to have a say in who his personnel man is. You're going to have a chance to have a say in the decisions that are being made. You're not going to be on some weird time frame with this GM that's only got 1 year left on his deal, and you just signed a 5-year deal, so you might have a different guy bringing in your personnel that you don't really know. You get to have a say in that. So now you get exactly the personnel you want. They got cap space. The roster is a little bit void of talent, and they don't have a quarterback, though. So for me, it comes down to Caleb Williams, right? And when I look at that, it is a little bit scary because even looking at the Jaguars, who looks more like Jared Goff, the quarterback that he's had so much success in the NFL with? Trevor Lawrence or Caleb Williams? I'm not saying Trevor Lawrence is better than Caleb Williams. I'm not saying he has a higher ceiling. I'm just saying the system he runs, that matters. Caleb's strength, right now at least, is not the strengths that Jared Goff has. Quick decisions, getting the ball out, being that guy to make quick decisions and do all these different things. Trevor Lawrence is one of the quickest guys to get rid of the football in the entire NFL. He is great at the quick passing game. Caleb is a playmaker. He's a guy that will extend plays from that Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers tree of playmakers at quarterback. So to me, that's the biggest question that I have, right, is how he views Caleb Williams when it comes to implementing his system. Because this system works, but you need a quarterback, you need a driver to drive this system, and he needs to see if Caleb is that guy.
Yeah. I think Caleb has shown enough to be intriguing, just to kind of speak to that, Clay. Like, we've seen him operate in the rhythm of the offense. We've seen when things are looking good, he also looks good. We've also seen when things look bad, him rely on playing hero ball too much. Like the Josh Allen hero ball that sometimes gets him in trouble. It's what makes him the MVP. It's sometimes what also gets him in trouble. So I think now there's like a good amount of tape on Caleb Williams. There's a lot to like, and there's a lot that he needs to fix. But I still think that he's obviously a highly intriguing prospect. And I will still use the word prospect because in the right hands, he's still got a lot of room to grow, and he could still grow into a great player. bringing it back to the Raiders, I think what's interesting about Tom Brady is Tom Brady able to tell a narrative that I'm here as a stabilizing force. Not only do I know ball, but I'm also a stabilizing force. The Bears have gone through a lot of head coaches. The Raiders have gone through more. I mean, let's just go through them. Since 2011, Hugh Jackson there, 1 season. Dennis Allen there, 2.5 seasons. Tony Sperano, interim guy. Jack Del Rio, 3 seasons. I'm sorry. John Gruden now there for 3.5 seasons. Rich Biasha, the special teams guy, interim. And then Josh McDaniels, 1.5 seasons. Antonio Pierce, 1.5 seasons. So they have also just churned and burned through head coaches. So is Tom Brady telling Ben Johnson, don't worry, we're going to cool the jets, you're going to be here a while? Or can he not really provide that kind of assurance? In terms of Ben Johnson, I will say this. I was one of the people who was kind of 50-50 between Ben Johnson or a Mike Vrabel, Brian Flores type of head coach. I'll throw Pete Carroll in there too. We've talked about it, that I was kind of coin flip. On one hand, you have the offensive phenom, who is undoubtedly not a flash in the pan offensive phenom. On the other hand, you have guys who have done it, who have led football teams, head coach. It's a lot more than coming up with game plans and play design. So there's that duality. However, when I hear Tom Brady really wants Ben Johnson, no more 50-50 for me. If Tom Brady wants Ben Johnson, he is the top of my list, and then everybody else is below that. That is how much respect I think Tom Brady deserves, as for all the reasons Clay said about the best to have ever done it. Super smart guy, super dedicated guy. If he has Ben Johnson circled, I'm following right along, and I've got Ben Johnson circled. So if you listened to the podcast a few weeks ago when I was hemming and hawing between, do we want the offensive guy or the program leader? No. I am now putting my seal next to Tom Brady's for Ben Johnson, and with Vrabel off the board, it obviously makes that a lot easier.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, Clay, to your point, like when you look at the quarterbacks, there's still a lot of unknown with Caleb Williams, right? Like no one's questioning that he can't still be great. I think that's very much on the board, is that he has all the tools needed, right, to be a very talented quarterback in this league. But at the end of the day, your job security, like if you're Ben Johnson and you're sitting there being like, you're going to go into Chicago and there's going to be immediate pressure to win now next year in the toughest division in football, what was in 2024. And you're going up against your former team and 2 teams that you've played twice a year, and you know what you're walking into in terms of the competition. If you're going to Vegas and your boss is telling you, we know there's no situation for a quarterback right now, we're going to be patient, we have this plan, what is your plan for a bridge quarterback, who do you want to be your personnel guy? Like the situation feels, if Tom Brady is really has as much power as, all this reporting is making it seem like in Vegas, the situation in Vegas just feels a little healthier, dare I say, than what Ben Johnson could potentially be walking into in Chicago. Ben Johnson would get to pick potentially his quarterback, maybe not in this year's draft, but in next year's draft, or would get to pick his bridge quarterback, versus coming into a situation where we drafted Caleb Williams. He's going to be here for 4 years, whether you like it or not. I don't know. I find it very interesting. This Vegas is not the Vegas in the mix because of Tom Brady and his sort of him attaching himself to this search. He's personally reaching out to and recruiting Ben Johnson.
Now, I will say about the quarterback situation, the bridge thing is interesting, right? Because you're going to need a bridge guy, and maybe you got a Sam Darnold who's played phenomenally well. Maybe you got a Jared Goff and you revitalize him again, right? Hey, I'm going to look for the next Jared Goff, who's somebody already in the league. All of that is very intriguing. But in terms of guys coming out this year, and then, it's hard to say 2 years out, I don't know if there's any rookie this year who even comes close to the prospect that Caleb Williams is.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying that we should be turning. I'm just saying there's still a lot of unknown with Caleb Williams, and you're coming into a situation with him in year 2 where it's Caleb, it sort of feels like it's Caleb Williams' team. It wouldn't necessarily be maybe Ben Johnson's team. Like he would have to sort of, do you kind of know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
just from what we've gathered and the way that this organization has treated Caleb Williams, has given Caleb Williams a voice and sort of a platform to be a captain in year one and, sort of be a player-led locker room. Like I just get the sense that maybe if I'm Ben Johnson, the situation in Vegas may feel safer, more secure, if that is what ownership is preaching to me.
And I do understand what you mean in terms of if you're coming to the Bears, it is what is your plan to make Caleb Williams
correct,
the central point of this franchise and everything he can be. Whereas if he goes to Vegas, it's what is your plan?
Yes.
Period. What is your plan?
Correct. Yeah. No, I love that. Clay, did you have anything to add? Otherwise, we could get into Mike McCarthy because that's big too.
No, yeah, let's get into Mike. Lots to talk about there.
Yeah. So big news, obviously, Dallas. What are you doing? Here's the thing. The Bears put in a request to interview Mike McCarthy last week, 2 weeks ago. Time is an endless circle in this phase of my life. Last week, put in a request to interview Mike McCarthy. That was rejected by the Cowboys because Mike McCarthy was still under contract until January 14th. On Monday, January 13th, reports surfaced that Jerry Jones will not be keeping Mike McCarthy after the rejection where everyone was like, oh, Mike McCarthy's going to stay in Dallas because Jerry's going to fight to keep him. Negotiations, I guess, never happened, agree on terms, and now Mike McCarthy will become a free agent on January 14th and will have his pick of where he will go. The Bears' pursuit of Mike McCarthy with the request being put into Dallas last week, to me, was really interesting because you could have just waited to see how it played out to see if he was even going to be available. But by putting in that early request to interview Mike McCarthy, the Bears wanted everyone to know that they were going to try and talk to him. So I find this very interesting. Let's do a little bit, Alex Shapiro, I know you're going to walk us through sort of a rundown of Mike McCarthy, what he could potentially bring, what's his history, just a recap. I know Bears fans are obviously very familiar with Mike McCarthy, but it's good to kind of run it back and walk it through. So to me, guys, not only is this making Mike McCarthy available, but it's also creating more competition because now Dallas becomes an opening. And they may try and go get Ben Johnson. They may try and go get Aaron Glenn. They may try and go get Brian Flores. So there's sort of that in the mix as well. But let's talk Mike McCarthy. What could he bring? Alex Shapiro, go.
Yeah. So I agree with you. I think requesting him early is a strong show of interest. It indicates to Mike McCarthy, hey, we're serious about you. And I think that matters. Mike McCarthy is tied with Pete Carroll on the list of head coaches that the Bears have put out, the ones that we have, as the most experienced head coach out there on this candidate list. 18 years as head coach. That's the same as Pete Carroll. That is 13 years with the Packers, as Ruthie was kind of alluding to, Bears fans really familiar with, and then 5 years with the Cowboys. He is also the winningest head coach on the Bears list. He has 174 wins. That is 12th all time. And it's not just a longevity thing. It's not like, oh, he's coaching forever, so he's got a lot of wins. He has a 608 win percentage in the regular season. So he wins a lot more than he loses. And he's got 11 postseason wins. He has also done something that only one other person on this interview list has done, and that is win the Super Bowl as a head coach. So again, similar to Pete Carroll in that regard. These are the two Super Bowl winners. And that was Super Bowl 45 that Mike McCarthy won when he led Aaron Rodgers and the Packers over Mike Tomlin, Ben Roethlisberger, and the Steelers. So Mike Tomlin, this guy who everybody loves, like honestly kind of similar to Mike McCarthy in the sense that wins a lot in the regular season, one Super Bowl win, and Mike McCarthy got the Super Bowl win over Mike Tomlin. Now, here's a big difference. Mike McCarthy's an offensive guy. A lot of these people, Mike Tomlin, Pete Carroll, defensive dudes. He is an offensive dude. His first job in the NFL was with the Chiefs in 1993 as an offensive assistant, quickly became their QB's coach, and then he got his first OC job with the Saints in 2000. And then finally, he was the head coach for the Packers in 2006. He's been head coach ever since. Notable quarterbacks. As a quarterbacks coach, where he got to start, notable quarterbacks he has worked for. Joe Montana with the Kansas City Chiefs. Remember Joe Montana played for the Chiefs? I certainly forget that all the time. Brett Favre, Alex Smith with the 49ers. I'm sorry. Aaron Rodgers, of course. And then also Dak Prescott with the Cowboys. Now he has gone both ways. He's been CEO Mike McCarthy. He has also been play caller Mike McCarthy. And he has had success in both roles. When he's a CEO, teams have been really good. When he's been the play caller, teams have been really good. Okay, so what are the red flags? Because all these guys have red flags. It is recent postseason struggles. So again, like we said off the top, lots of regular season success under Mike McCarthy with the Cowboys, but the postseason has been really bad, including 2 embarrassing, to be quite frank, wild card losses at home, and that includes the only loss to a 7 seed in NFL history. The field expanded to 7 seeds in 2020. In that time, 7 seeds are 1 and 8, and that 1 is the Packers win over the Cowboys in Dallas last year. It wasn't even close. I mean, the final score was 48-32. They almost went up 50. The game was truly not as close as that final score indicates. There were some garbage time scores at the end for the Cowboys. So regular season success is all well and good, but when it's crunch time, lately it has been tough sledding for Mike McCarthy and the Cowboys.
Clay, your thoughts?
Yeah, Mike McCarthy's interesting. And obviously, Alex, you brought up, it's a good rundown right there. You brought up some good points. The first thing is, he's a guy that can actually say he has development help with Aaron Rodgers. He's developed Dak Prescott. He has been shown to develop quarterbacks. And obviously, we're not seeing Dak Prescott as a great quarterback. In regular season, the past few years, you look at Dak Prescott's numbers, he's played some really good quarterback. I mean, he has dang near top 5 numbers in the regular season the past 4 or 5 years. You look at Dak versus everybody else. I think, like you said, this guy has 11 wins in the postseason. He's won a Super Bowl. Obviously, recency bias. He's 1-3 in his last 4 years. But then again, you brought up the Tomlin. Tomlin's lost his last 6 playoff games. Anybody would take Tomlin in a heartbeat because of the persona behind Mike Tomlin and how he comes off and how he's portrayed. From guys that I know that have played with Mike McCarthy, they love Mike McCarthy. They say he is a leader. He's a guy that you will go out there and you'll play hard for. I never played for him and played against him several times. The guy can straight up coach football. And he knows how to pick a staff. You look at his last defensive coordinator. Who is that? He just won a playoff game last night, right? Dan Quinn.
Dan Quinn, yeah.
Dan Quinn. Yeah, Dan Quinn. Then we got Kellen Moore. Just won a playoff game last night. I mean, this guy can pick a staff. He's brought in offensive coordinators. He's brought in defensive coordinators. He calls plays. Last year, 12-5, they called plays. One of the best offenses in the NFL, in top 5 in scoring and yards. He was calling the plays. He is not just a head coach. He can be a CEO when he had Kellen Moore calling plays, who Ruthie knows I have a little crush on Kellen Moore as far as getting him some coaching opportunities. Yesterday didn't really do much for him. They won the game, but the offense didn't look great. But he knows how to hire a staff. He's a guy that can call plays. He knows the game. He's not just the CEO. He's not just the coordinator. He can do both. He's shown that he can develop a quarterback. I think Mike McCarthy should get serious consideration for the Chicago Bears job. I think Ben Johnson's obviously still my number 1. After that, it's kind of a logjam at this point. It's a guy that has shown that he can do it, an offensive mind, a guy that has developed a quarterback, a guy that has shown he can put a staff together. Mike McCarthy needs to be right up there near the top, in my opinion.
What's your guys' take on sort of the Dallas job now being open and the greater competition maybe that creates? And would the Bears maybe try and move quickly on a guy like Mike McCarthy in order to lock something up? Where do you stand on that?
I don't know. It's interesting. The Cowboys job is obviously intriguing for a lot of reasons. I mean, Dak Prescott is a solid quarterback. You know, a lot of teams have a bad quarterback situation. He's solid. They have a good offensive line. CeeDee Lamb is one of the top playmakers on offense in the league, and Micah Parsons again, one of the top playmakers on defense in the league. The talent is there. The platform is there. That is America's team, as they love to remind us, and they are starving for a winner, similar to Chicago. I mean, the next head coach of the Chicago Bears who wins a Super Bowl will be deified like Mike Ditka, in the same way that the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys who wins a Super Bowl will be deified, just like Tom Landry, just like Jimmy Johnson. You know, it's that same type of vibe. Similarly, we have questions about the Kevin Poles and Kevin Poles. It might as well be Kevin Poles.
Kevin Poles.
Kevin Poles,
you call him
Ryan Poles. Is that, our head coach is going to have questions about working for Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles? I wonder if people are going to have questions about working for Jerry Jones. So I feel it's actually like very similar situations.
Yeah, and here's the other thing that's interesting. And going back to Mike McCarthy, he's coached the Packers and the Cowboys. The Bears, like you said, it's a huge job. And the Packers and the Cowboys are two huge markets. So if you can have success there, you know what it's like to be in big markets, and you know how stressful it's going to be when you come to Chicago. So that is even another reason I like Mike McCarthy. You can have success in Dallas. There's even more scrutiny there than Chicago, believe it or not. That's even a bigger fan base, even more national news. It's the Dallas Cowboys. So that, to me, that is a big thing as well. And then what this Cowboys says, answer your question, Ruthie. What does the Cowboys entering the market for a head coach do to the Bears? First thing that comes to my mind is price just went up for the top guys. Jerry Jones got money, okay? Jerry Jones has money. So he's got some deep pockets. You're competing against them. The number one earning franchise in the NFL, obviously the Dallas Cowboys again. So it's going to be difficult. And a lot of people can be drawn by the star, the star on your helmet, being the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Chicago Bears, great franchise, one of the original charter franchises, no pun intended, because this is the charter podcast. But there is something to be said about the Dallas Cowboys that will lure some of these head coaches. So I think they might take precedence as the number one opening, just because the Dallas Cowboys head coaching job is available now. You got a good quarterback that some think, you look at the regular season at least, is a top 5, top 10 quarterback over the last 4 or 5 years. Obviously, Dax had a down year last year, was hurt for a number of years. So it's going to be difficult now if you are competing against the Cowboys for the same candidate, because they are such a big name, high profile organization that has a lot of money as well.
You talk about money, Jerry Jones, your interview is going to be on his yacht in wherever. Like, that's where you're going to get interviewed. The Bears aren't even bringing people in. They're going to fly Dan Quinn in and coach. Like, to me, and I know that the Bears are not, they're perceived as this sort of cheap franchise. I don't think that's accurate. I think sometimes they really see the moments to prove that they're not. But that being said, like, Jerry Jones is going to wine and dine you. Jerry Jones is going to kiss the ground that you walk on and feed you the best steak and give you the best wine and put you on his yacht and give you all the perks. Like, the Bears just, that's not their style. So that's a factor. I mean, I'm not saying that people are going to make their big decision on that, but like, you also have Dak Prescott. And like, say what you want about Dak Prescott. Maybe he has a ceiling, but he's an established quarterback that has proven he has very good talent that maybe just sort of needs a Jared Goff-esque resurgence.
There's all that to be said about Jerry Jones and the whining and dining. However, you will not need an Uber. You won't have an impersonal black car on your drive from the airport to the facility, because George will pick you up at the airport and he will drive you. And
yes,
that's the different sensibilities. I agree. The Bears are not cheap. I don't understand really where that sentiment comes from. All you have to do is look at Hallis Hall and all of the investments they've put into that facility, into the team. They spend money on the team. They take that seriously. But it's different, it's not a mom and pop shop. I'm not saying that, but it has that family feel of the chairman picking you up from the airport himself, to drive you, right? I mean, we all saw those stories with Ryan Poles. It's a much different type of feel. And I wonder if that feel will attract different candidates. Do you want the glitz and the glamour, or do you want the more down to home Midwestern sensibility? I'm sure the different vibes do attract different candidates. But I agree with you. In terms of the styles are very different, but it does not mean the McCaskies are cheap.
No, I think when you are wined and dined, it says something about the way that the organization does business, and that they understand the moment and they understand the gravity and the weight that comes with being the head coach of an NFL franchise. Like, I'm not clearly you are learning how to wine and dine your girl, but all I'm saying is, like, I just think there's something to be said about the way that these interviews are being executed. And George McCaskey picking you up from the airport is one thing. Flying you in and coach is a separate sort of, they're two different things in my brain. Like those are separate. I think you have to understand what the moment brings of interviewing and trying to convince someone to take that job or other jobs.
Yeah. And just the last thing is, I remember just going back to when I took a pre-draft visit to the Dallas Cowboys and sitting down across the table from Jerry Jones and all these guys, and that city being a Dallas Cowboy, I mean, being a Chicago Bears, incredible in Chicago, but I mean, just like the presence of the star of the Dallas Cowboys is also something that is very alluring. It's just such a high profile position. And I mean, just to say what Alex said, to repeat that, I mean, it will be different types of candidates, I think, that are interested in each spot, but that is also something to compete with.
I love it. It's great stuff, guys. Did we have anything else to add?
No.
I'm getting head shakes. Clay?
No, I think
I see the wheels turning.
Thomas Brown was interviewed today. Ron Rivera. I was curious on your guys' thoughts about those two candidates. Yeah. Any thoughts on those guys?
Yeah. Listen, I think we know what you get with Thomas Brown, right? Like, his interview was those last 5 games. And obviously it was a very tough situation he was thrown into. But I just think there are probably more experienced, qualified candidates that are out there. Thomas Brown, I think, will be a head coach one day. I just don't know if he's ready for that moment quite yet. I loved the taste of Thomas Brown that we got, but I just think that let him just be an offensive coordinator for a whole season, for Pete's sake. Like, I mean, the guy can't, just get into a rhythm of what he's trying to do as an offensive coordinator, let alone be a head coach. So I'm rooting for that guy. I would love for him to be a head coach in this league one day. We all were very captivated and drawn to his personality. And then with the Ron Rivera stuff, I thought it's interesting. What I also find interesting is like how sour it turned in Washington. And I know it was like a different regime and different ownership with him, but that got pretty ugly. Like the end, I have a bad taste in my mouth for how things ended with Ron Rivera in Washington. So I'm just sort of curious as to know what he learned from that experience and how it changed. Again, I just think there are probably candidates that I would prefer to see get the job in Chicago over Ron.
Sure. I will say Riverboat Ron is an intriguing candidate, and he fits the part of the Bears organization and keeping it with that home. Like Mike Vrabel fits with the Patriots because he understands the Patriots way and he understands everything. Ron Rivera, I think, similarly fits that Bears organization. I mean, he's a Super Bowl champion Bear. He's a part of the 85 Bears. He knows what it was like working with Mike Ditka and Buddy Ryan and all those guys. He also, was the defensive coordinator in Chicago when the defense was really, really good. That's Super Bowl defense. That's Ron Rivera's, even though it's Lovie Smith's defense, Ron Rivera was there. So he has those credentials. He has that homegrown feeling of Bears through and through. I mean, this is totally narrative nonsense meatball. But like the last time the Bears won a Super Bowl, they had a former player as the head coach. So why not bring in another former player to be the head coach in like meatball universe, where it's like, this guy played for the Bears. He was a defensive coordinator for the Bears. So, you know, there's some narrative stuff you can put together that makes Ron Rivera like, oh yeah, intriguing candidate. Let's hear more. I want to hear about why you want to get back into coaching. And, you know, he's another, you know what you're getting with Ron Rivera, and he has been a successful head coach. Obviously the Washington stuff didn't go as well as he liked, but very good in Carolina as well. So thanks for bringing that up. I almost forgot. There have been so many people. Too. There's been so many people. So good on you, Clay, for reminding us about Riverboat Ron.
Yeah, Ron, I think obviously he's not my top 5 candidates list here, but I think he's an interesting guy. Obviously, look at the success he had in Carolina, went to the Super Bowl, was actually the coach of the year twice, went to the Super Bowl, developed Cam Newton. So he's a guy that has a little bit of experience developing a quarterback. Obviously, Ruthie brought up a very good point. When he was with the Commanders, something went wrong there. My old roommate when I was young in the NFL was Kirk Coleman. He was a safety for the Eagles at the time, 7th-round pick, and he ended up playing several years in Carolina. And he couldn't say enough good things about Ron Rivera, how the guys loved him, obviously defensive coach, defensive player, and another guy that coaches, that players love to play for. He's a leader, a guy that just has a presence about him. When he talks, you listen. But I am with Ruthie, scared off by kind of what happened with the Panthers there, but thought he is a guy that was worth an interview. So I think they could do worse, but they could do better as well.
Yeah, and you look at the Mike Vrabel situation of, you know, former player kind of going with the former player, gets the job there. It's like meatball, like, I love this organization. I love this franchise. You know, there's something to like love about sort of that maybe side story of a candidate. But I don't know why I have sort of a bad taste in my mouth for what happened in Washington. And obviously we know that there are probably a million sides to that story. But it's definitely worth an interview, definitely worth hearing his thoughts. What do you want to see here? How would you change this culture? Like, what would your vision be for Caleb Williams? Like, that's someone who's been around, knows football, knows the league, and probably has some really intelligent and noteworthy things to contribute. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Clay. Good stuff. All right, everyone. Well, that was fun. Good stuff here. We'll do another pod later this week. I think we'll have a lot more news. It's just pouring out here. It's just quite a very, I was telling David Haw this today, like a very dramatic sort of, like lots of moving pieces in this coaching search and the way that this carousel is sort of moving and shaking. And we were talking about how it's just sort of now in this day and age, how it's being covered, how it's being reported, and the leaks that come out and the way agents want their clients to be framed. And it's just really exciting and it's fascinating. I can't wait to see like the latest news. Obviously the Marcus Freeman thing, which we didn't even get to over the weekend. I think that's a little bit of a, you know, is Marcus Freeman really, he just signed an extension to prevent this distraction. So I just find it hard to believe that that's going to be, that's going to go anywhere at this point. But if it does, we'll obviously cover it here. And yeah, that's really all we have to talk about today, guys. But I'm going to run and do the Big Pro Football Show on the Chicago Sports Network. And make sure you tune back here on the Charter Podcast later this week. For Alex Shapiro, Clay Harbor, I'm Ruthie Polinsky. The Charter Podcast is brought to you by St. Xavier University. We'll talk to you soon.